Okay, what can we expect from this? Because it wasn't originally going to be in the Ivory Coast. It is now. They didn't want it played at a later time because of the wet weather and everything. So it's January, February. And this is what we have. And they kick off the tournament. We'll get into the favourites for the tournament soon. But what chance of the home nation coming up with the goods this year?
Well, I think being the host of a tournament like this, it can be a blessing or it can be a curse.
Yep.
For Ivory Coast, if you start strongly, if you get the win behind you, if you get the fans on side, I think the fans are desperate to really enjoy themselves, which is a good sign. I think if they start well against Guinea-Bissau, then I think Ivory Coast could be reaching the latter stage of the tournament. However, pressure can affect this team. It can affect any team, of course. Ivory Coasts have been known to crumble in past editions of the Nations Cup. And if they start slowly, they've obviously got Nigeria in their group. If that game doesn't go to plan, things could go against them. But a midfield with the likes of Frank Kessie, Seko Fofana, obviously Sebastian Haller leading the line, experience in Serge Aurier. There's talent there, and I think Ivory Coast are going to be a genuine threat in this Nations Cup.
Okay, we've asked you to put together your top 10 that you think have probably got the best chance. Now, the bookies have got Senegal as the favourites, slightly, but Morocco you have as number one in your power rankings, which makes sense because they had that excellent run deep into the World Cup. Why do you think the bookies have got Senegal as favourites, and what do you think sets Morocco apart from the rest of the nations?
First of all, I'm going to admit there wasn't that much in it. And this top 10 has been drafted and redrafted a few times. I got my predictions at the last Nations Cup for ESPN hideously wrong, so I wouldn't put so much stock in this. For me, Morocco just have the unity, the togetherness that we saw during the World Cup. They proved in Qatar they know how to negotiate really elite level knockout competition. There is a tactical maturity, a sophistication about this side. They've got different ways of hurting you, which a lot of teams in Africa, they don't necessarily have. In En-Nesyri, a player who he can be a bit fitful. He hasn't always done it for Morocco, but
He's
actually
not been good this season either for Sevilla. That's the other thing, Ed.
True, but in recent games, like the PSV game, for example, when things come together, he can really be a devastating prospect. And all things being well, he should have service. There are a few caveats because the likes of Hakim Ziyech, the likes of Sofiane Boufal aren't in the best form. They haven't been enjoying the best of times at club level recently. And that is a concern for me. It's a slight caveat for my Morocco prediction. And also the fact that Morocco, I think there's no team who are as big a letdown at the Nations Cup as Morocco. They've reached one semi-final since the 80s. They've not won it since 1976. So they do have a habit of falling short. This year, I just believe that they've got enough to get over the line.
Yeah, I like what Ed said there, MD, about Morocco knew how to negotiate at the World Cup. I agree with that. And I think the difference I feel at AFCON with Morocco is that at the World Cup, you know, against the likes of Spain or Portugal, they were very reactive in a very positive way. They knew how to negotiate, just like Ed said, their way into making a historic run. But at AFCON, the storyline is different because you have to be proactive and you have to tell your own story on the pitch. And I feel that Morocco, and just like Ed said, they haven't won since 1976. It's been a struggle. Sometimes that's an issue, trying to identify who they are. Amrabat, for example, you know, the most recoveries at the World Cup. You know, I don't feel that that's going to be the same story for him at Africa Cup as well. How about what's the kid from Marseille, Azzedine Ounahi, who was fantastic at the World Cup? He has been very disappointing for Marseille. So all these players, they're not taking precedent, they're not taking protagonist roles at AFCON. So I worry a little bit. There's no doubt about their talent, and it's incredible what they did at the World Cup. But this one, I just don't see them as favored to win it. Obviously, they're favorites, but I don't think they're gonna win it. Just because you need to be more proactive, I just don't think they have it.
Oh, Mane and Salah made the headlines last time. That was the final when Senegal beat Egypt on penalties. So we know all about the big names that are going to be there, Ed. What about some of the others that might be worth us keeping tabs on? Who have you got for us?
The player I'm most excited. The single player I'm most excited about watching in action is Lamine Camara of Senegal. He was named CAF Young Player of the Year at the recent CAF Awards, taking the mantle from his Senegal midfield partner, Pape Matar Sarr. And this guy a year ago was a cut above at the Under-20 Nations Cup. He was playing a different game at times from his opposition. We've seen at Metz, after moving to the French league, what he's capable of. I don't know if you remember that goal from inside his own half against Monaco. And it's at a time when Senegal really need fresh blood in that midfield. Idrissa Gana Gueye is aging, as is Nampalys Mendy, as is Cheikhou Kouyaté. And Lamine Camara, who can play in there alongside Pape Matar Sarr, is coming at an absolutely ideal time. And I think he could be a real star at this tournament. Also for Morocco, Amir Richardson, who plays for Reims in Liga. This guy is a remarkable deep line playmaker. He's 6'6", he's left-footed, he's creative, he's a presence. He's scored, I think, about 3 goals in Liga so far this season. He's the son of Michael Ray Robinson, the former NBA player. Could have played for USA, could have played for France. He's now playing for Morocco. And if he gets an opportunity in that stacked midfield, he could be a really eye-catching presence at this tournament.
Okay, Ed, what can we expect for the opening weekend, which begins with Ivory Coast against Guinea-Bissau?
I think for the heavyweights in action, particularly Ivory Coast, Egypt, it'll be a case of setting the tone. They're playing weaker opposition. It's a case of you get that first win under the belt. In the expanded AFCON, if you win one game, you're pretty much through to the knockouts. So I think for those teams, it'll be a case of setting the tone, demonstrating what they can do. Ivory Coast up against Guinea-Bissau in an opening game that could be a banana skin. Guinea-Bissau have qualified for the last 3 tournaments, but I don't think it will be. And obviously Nigeria opening their campaign this weekend, where I have a concern that things are going to be a little less straightforward for the Super Eagles during their group stage campaign. Indeed, beginning against Equatorial Guinea this weekend.
By the way, you had them 10th, Nigeria, in your rankings. Do you expect them to go deep in this competition? And if they do, would that be a surprise, despite the fact they have been international heavyweights for those of a certain vintage?
Listen, my heart is telling me that this is going to be the year when the Super Eagles finally pull it together. That amazing wealth of offensive talent. Victor Osimhen, the reigning CAF Player of the Year. He was 8th in the Ballon d'Or. This is going to be the year. However, my head, which has seen them recently draw with Lesotho, draw with Zimbabwe. They were defeated by Guinea in a pre-tournament qualifier, pre-tournament friendly, sorry. I just feel it's going to be more doom and gloom for the Super Eagles. They traded in Gernot Rohr, who was a manager who was tactically a bit limited, but just about squeezed out results, for a manager in Jose Peseiro, who is not very tactically very tactically limited and doesn't know how to squeeze out results. And they've got a midfield stacked with runners. They've got plenty of attacking talent, but they just are less than the sum of their parts. They struggle to pull it all together, and I'm worried it's going to be a very tough campaign for them. I hope I'm wrong.
Okay. Let's get predictions. LME, who's your AFCON winner this year?
I have the Ivory Coast, actually. I feel that there's still a lot of resentment for not making the World Cup in Russia and the last one as well. I think there's a lot of talent there, specifically Ousmane Diamond, who plays for Sporting CP, the center back. A lot of really big teams are looking at him. They have a nice, a spine, I think. Adingra from Brighton, I think he's going to light it up. And I think that finally that home support is going to live up to expectations. I wanted to pick Egypt, but I'm a little bit worried about a few things. I wonder if Mohamed Salah can continue his run. It's not just about Salah, of course. But I'm going with the Ivory Coast, Andy.
Egypt are the last team to win it back-to-back, 2008, 2010. Can
Most
Senegal...
successful, right, at AFCON?
Indeed, they are indeed. So can Senegal go back-to-back? Or are you sticking with your top 10 and number 1 in your power rankings for Morocco, Ed?
Listen, I think no one would respect me if before the tournament's even kicked off, I'm changing my prediction to win it. So I'm going to stick with Morocco for now.
Okay.
However, that being said, if things don't go to plan in the group stage, I might change my prediction. But with Morocco having Tanzania and Zambia to come, I think they will steadily pick up speed, pick up momentum, and they'll be a bit sharper when it really matters at the business end.
Ed, they could meet Egypt in the quarterfinals, right? If things go the right way, meaning that it would be a repeat, and Egypt won that one. So whatever happens, they would have to face Egypt if Egypt do well as well.
Yeah, and it was Egypt who eliminated Morocco at the last Nations Cup when another one of my predictions fell by the wayside. I think 2 years ago, yeah, I think Egypt probably have the nous, they have the know-how to get through that knockout game. But I really believe that Morocco's experience in Qatar, experiencing those real blockbuster knockouts, will count in their favor when they come up against the likes of an Egypt, the likes of a Cameroon, the kind of teams who just know how to get to the latter stages of tournaments like this.
Who do you have, Andy?
I'm not going to predict a winner, but I'm going to go Nigeria to surprise people and get further. Maybe semi-final. I just think Osimhen, this is a tournament for him, and I don't know how much longer he'll be at his current club. I think this could add a lot of value onto his transfer fees. So Osimhen and Nigeria to do well. So that's what we've got. Ed, enjoy it, and we can keep in touch with you and up to date with all your things on Twitter, on social media, and on ESPN. Thank you for joining us.